How to make an aura sky in Blender using the world setting. I'm Jordan Needham, this is Jham 3D, and let's get into this. So this tutorial was requested by Cash 3D. Shout out to Cash 3D. Check him out if you haven't already. Basically, I made this artwork. It's Moon Knight fan art, and it's got this crazy kind of sky going on where there's all these different colors. You know, we have this like mystic fantasy sort of feel and a bunch of sci-fi colors all in one world, all in one sky. All right, let's go ahead and do that. I'm on my world settings. Let's call this aura sky. If you don't know how to open your world tab, basically it is in the shader editor tab. And then you change this from what is default object, you change it to world. So at that point, now we have this just plain gray sky, which is obviously insanely boring, right? And we want to change that. The way that we're doing that today is we're going to Shift A, and we're going to add in an environment texture. And then we're going to plug that into the color of this background. And now it's going to show up pink because we have no image for Blender to reference here. And by default, it just turns that image pink. So let's open that. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to find my HDRs. And we're just going to open the first one here. Might take some time to load, especially if you're using these. I'm going to try to include the links to what I can find in the description below. I downloaded these months ago, so I apologize if I can't find all of them. But basically, you can just go online and you can search for like space HDRs, right? And now you got to be careful because not all of them are actually HDRIs. They're just like JPEGs or PNGs, which can work, by the way. It's just usually lower resolution and it's not really affecting the light in the same way. But this website right here, which I will include the link to in the description, that has a couple really cool space HDRIs, and I believe that I have some of them. And then there's Graphics Crate, which has some pretty sick ones as well. It's not a ton of them, but it's definitely something you could get started with, especially when we're mixing these. And then I have a YouTube link with 6 free HDRI space environments created by Pixeled Asteroid. In his description, you can click on the free download link, and that'll take you here where you will have 6 free HDRI environments to download. Okay, shout out Pixeled Asteroid. And then also check out some of these sites like Omni. But again, usually these stock websites are going to come up with things that are, you know, JPEGs, PNGs, stuff like that. And then finally, if you really wanted to get like experimental, I guess you could use something like Midjourney to generate some space images as well. Okay, so that was kind of a long tangent, but I wanted to make sure that I was being fair and showing you guys how I sourced these HDRIs. So now we have this one HDRI, and it's pretty cool, but it's not quite there yet, right? I mean, there's more that we added to this. So let's go back to 0. So we're gonna frame us in the camera view. Shift A, add in a mix RGB. So now we're gonna end up with this. Let's click this HDRI and Shift D to duplicate it. Let's plug it into the bottom socket of that mix RGB node. And then let's go ahead and open up a different HDRI, Nebula N0 HDR, which you can get for free, and I included a link to that. Okay, now we're really talking, right? Now we have 2 kind of mixes going on here, which are pretty sick. Another thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna actually Shift D on this mix RGB shader, and we're gonna place it in front. We're gonna Shift D to duplicate this HDR and plug it into the bottom socket of that. And then we're gonna open up another image, and you can mix as many as you want. I think I'm just gonna stick with 3. Let's see, is that one that I want? Okay, so now you can see how we have a bunch of these different colors, and this was all done by just mixing 3 space HDRs. So it gets really creative, it gets really colorful really quickly. Now you need to move them around, or maybe you don't like how they're mixed, it's too strong, maybe you want it a little more subtle. So I'll show you how to do those real quick, and then we'll be on our way. So to move these around, click on one of these environment textures and hit Control T. If you perform this action and no nodes show up, that is because your Node Wrangler add-on is not enabled. This is a built-in Blender add-on, and it should be enabled by default, I believe, but if it is not, all you have to do is go into your preferences and enable it. This is going to bring up a vector mapping node and a texture coordinate node. With this, you can now rotate. So I will show you. Control Shift click on this image so it occupies the entire viewer. And then I'm going to rotate on the Z so you can see it moving. Now there is a little bit of lag, and I should mention I am on cycles. There is a little bit of a lag, and that's because this image in particular is, I think it's like 8K or something. It might only be 4K. But just keep in mind, the higher resolution you get these images, the more likely it is to lag a little bit, and that's pretty common with HDRs. Okay, so let's just, for the sake of demonstration, let's kind of rotate this around and see what we can come up with. I kind of like that, and then let's go into this one. Control Shift click on that one, and then also I'm gonna hit Control T on that one so we can control that as well. Now this one does seem to have a little bit of image distortion or some artifacts in it, which for my liking, I actually don't mind this. I think it looks kind of cool for this scene, for this use case. It's not really a problem, but keep that in mind. That's something you might want to look out for. Okay, so I really like this orange, but maybe we can get a bit of a gradient by kind of putting that yellow in the bottom. And now let's take a look at this final one. Control Shift click it. I'm gonna Control T to add some some mapping nodes on there. Just kind of space this out so it's not too much of a jungle or spaghetti factory. Okay, now this one, I really don't like the placement of this at all. It seems like we just got like the most boring part of it. It's just the kind of boring spot of this image. So we definitely want to rotate this one, which is nice. So we're gonna rotate it on the Z because I want to show some of this purple. Oh, too much. It gets really hard because it just lags almost always. Okay, no, just a little bit more. So now that we have these, we go here. I Control Shift clicked on my background, which is gonna show us the mix of everything. And once again, it's all blown out. But there's a few ways that we can tamper with this. So what we can do is we can change the mixed nodes, the mixed modes, that is, I'm sorry. There's a few different modes that work pretty well for this. So the default works pretty well at times. This is just mix. Or you can use overlay, add screen, or lighten, and maybe you can use multiply. However, that one's really, really powerful. Let's start out with screen. This is just mixing the bottom image right here with the top image. So color 2, image number 2 is being mixed with color 1, image number 1. And it's being mixed with the screen blend mode. So let's kind of lessen that a little bit. And you can see we're starting to blend this a little bit better. Instead of it being overpowering, you can kind of still see that hint of green and everything, which is nice. Okay, and now let's Control Shift click up here to see what we got when we do this. Okay, now we got some blues. You know, I'm starting to think of blues are a little bit too hot. So what I'm gonna do is Shift A, add in a hue saturation node. I'm just trying to show you how you can customize this to your own liking. And I'm actually gonna desaturate that just a little bit. Yeah, maybe like 0.85. Let's do 0.9. I think that's a little too much. Okay, you can also change the hue just a little bit to fit the scene a little bit more. And now we got this pink color. It's kind of pink and purple, which is freaking awesome. So again, this is M to mute. This is without the hue saturation, and then we added it back. And that's with, and I think that definitely fits a little bit better. And then let's change this one. Let's use add just to see what kind of results we get. So yeah, add is nice because it can brighten everything up a little bit. And often with these space HDRIs, they get really, really dark and dull. So I don't quite want it to be that much. I think it's a little desaturated. It's kind of getting boring. I like all the colors that we got here, but man, I really, I'm just gonna be honest right now. I'm just completely doing this like out of my ass, but this has turned out pretty cool. And one final tip, I almost forgot to include this. I love to play with the color management in our render properties. So just click on your render properties and scroll down to color management. And now you can see I'm using Filmic, which I do recommend for this. If we switch to standard though, we get this more saturated sort of look, but Filmic is more color accurate if that's something you care about. However, I actually kind of like the standard look right here. So I'm gonna maybe use that for now. Actually, we'll go back to Filmic for now, and I'm gonna change the look to high contrast. Let's try very high contrast. Maybe that's a little too much. Let's go to high contrast. I think that's spectacular. So again, we can try to go back to standard and go back to none. I think those lines are a little too harsh. So let's stay with Filmic and go to high contrast. And I like that. Okay, so definitely recommend playing with this color management and including the exposure. It's hard to get that really deep black as well as all these other colors, but when you can find that balance, it can be pretty nice. So that does it for today's tutorial. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comments below. And if you want to see anything else in the future, a tutorial on something else, let me know in the comments below as well. Also, if you made something with this tutorial, please share your work with me. You can do that by messaging me on Instagram. That's jham.3d. And that is actually how this subscriber, Cash3D, got this tutorial made. I'm Jordan Needham. This is Jham3D, and I will catch you guys next time.